What does it take to become the king of the gods? For Zeus, it took power, cunning, and a war that shook the cosmos. But what does it take to stay king? For Zeus, the answer was simple. You can't let history repeat itself. Zeus had overthrown his own father, the Titan Kronos, and Kronos had overthrown his father, Uranos. Zeus lived in the shadow of a terrifying family tradition, sons overthrowing fathers. So when he received a prophecy about his own child, he was determined to break the cycle. This is the story of how that fear led to the single most bizarre and spectacular birth in all of Hellenic mythology, the birth of Athena. Zeus's first great love was Metis, the goddess of wisdom itself. She was brilliant, and soon she was with child. But then came the warning, whispered by the ancient earth and the sky themselves. The prophecy was chillingly specific. Metis would bear a daughter, wise and powerful, a true equal to Zeus. But her next child, a son, would be the one to finally dethrone him. Being Zeus, he decided not to risk it. But he couldn't just cast Metis aside. He needed her wisdom. He needed to control the prophecy. So he did something only a god could conceive of. He sweet-talked Metis, luring her into a game of shape-shifting. When she turned herself into a tiny fly, he swallowed her whole. He thought he had solved the problem. He had silenced the mother and absorbed her wisdom, making it his own. But he didn't destroy the child. He had only changed her incubator to his own head. Soon after, a pain like no other seized the king of the gods. A headache so immense it felt like his skull would shatter. He roared in agony, and the heavens trembled. He needed relief, and he needed it now. It's at this point that the story splinters. The most famous version says he called upon Hephaestus, the divine blacksmith, and gave him a terrifying order: split my head open. Now, other ancient poets say it was the clever Titan Prometheus who swung the axe. But whoever the midwife was, they did as their king commanded. And from the wound, something impossible emerged. Not a baby, but a fully grown woman. It was Athena, her eyes blazing with intellect, already clad in full battle armor, a spear gripped tightly in her hand. She let out a mighty war cry that echoed across creation. The poet Pindar tells us the sun god Helios stopped his chariot in the sky, stunned by the sight. Athena had arrived, born not from a womb, but from the mind of the king of the gods. She was his wisdom made manifest, his power given form, and because she was not a son, she was no threat to his throne. She was his perfect daughter, his truest child, and 110% his favourite child. And if you don't believe me that she was his favourite, all I can say to that is ask Ares, he'll tell you. Now, while that's the most commonly portrayed version of events, it's not the only version. The ancient world was a messy place with overlapping myths. In some ways you could say there's a lot of fan fiction, even in the ancient world, about the gods and their origins. Some traditions, especially from ancient Libya, tell a different tale. They said Athena was actually the daughter of the sea god Poseidon and a lake nymph named Tridonis. This is why she is sometimes called Tridogenia, Triton-born. In that version, she argued with her father and was adopted by Zeus. In many ways, the birth from Zeus's head is a powerful piece of political propaganda. It establishes Athena as uniquely Zeus's daughter, bypassing any maternal lineage and cementing her loyalty and place in the Olympian order. It's a myth about intellect triumphing over brute succession. So, a swallowed mother, a divine headache, and a daughter born from pure thought. The birth of Athena is wild, symbolic, and in my opinion, it shows the violent imagination of the Greeks in even the most wonderful events, such as the birth of a child, or fully grown woman in this case. The birth of the goddess of wisdom did not bring peace to Olympus, far from it. One goddess was watching, and she was not impressed. She was enraged. Hera, the one and only, queen of the gods, goddess of marriage, and someone you do not want to piss off, Zeus had not only had another child with another woman, but in this case he had created that child entirely without his wife, violating her sacred domain, violating the natural order, you might say. He had proven in the most dramatic way possible that he didn't need her to create new divine life. Now, when you're the supreme commander of all matriarchs and the divine feminine, I think it's impossible not to take that personally. Hera decided she would answer this insult in kind. If Zeus could have a child without a mother, she could have a child without a father. According to the poet Hesiod, Hera, in a spiteful rage, conceived a child all on her own. But where Zeus's creation was the perfect daughter Athena, Hera's was not. She gave birth to a son, Hephaestus, poor, long-suffering Hephaestus. But he was born weak and lame. Ashamed of this imperfect child, a symbol of her failed attempt to one-up her husband, she cast him from the heights of Mount Olympus. This act of maternal rejection would define Hephaestus, who would later return as the blacksmith of the gods, his bitterness towards his mother never truly fading. Personally, I can't blame him. But there is another, even more terrifying version of Hera's revenge. In another ancient hymn, Hera's goal wasn't just to match Zeus, but to destroy him. She prayed not for a son, but for a champion, a son that would be stronger than Zeus himself. And the earth, Gaia, answered her prayer. She gave birth to a monster. And I don't mean that figuratively, I mean that very literally. The monster of monsters, the absolute apex of the final boss. A creature of pure chaos, with 100 dragon heads, breathing fire, and screaming with the voices of 1,000 beasts. She had birthed Typhon, the greatest threat Zeus would ever face, one of the most dangerous creatures in Greek mythology. Now, whether it was a crippled god or a world-ending monster, Hera's reaction to the birth of Athena set in motion events that would scar the divine family forever, whichever way you swing it, proving that on Mount Olympus, even the birth of a new god is an act of war. All that said, there is a much better version of Hera's reaction as well. In one version, and it's the version that I personally prefer, she rejoices at the birth of Athena. She can't believe how perfect this daughter is. So she accepts her, and Athena easily becomes one of the greatest members of the Pantheon. Now, in my headcanon, I like to think Ares wasn't born yet, because I just like the idea of an older sister, Athena, annoying a toddler Ares. But if he was, I can imagine his reaction was pretty pissed. I tend to do another video on Athena, basically encompassing all her myths and her personality and the meaning behind her existence. But thought I would just do a shorter video than usual, covering her birth and Hera's hilarious reactions. I personally think it's no accident that the child he birthed from his literal head is his by far favourite child, who can basically do no wrong and get away with murder and stuff that his other children just wouldn't dream of getting away with. Again, don't believe me, ask Ares in the Iliad. That's it for this video, shorter one than usual. I'm still working on the INS Dakar video. It's taking a little longer than I thought because it was a big deep rabbit hole to go down, but it should be up by this weekend. I am curious about what version you lot think is the best one of Athena's birth, and which version of Hera's revenge do you personally prefer? Let me know down in the comments, it'd be interesting to hear your thoughts on it. I'll see you all for the INS Dakar video. Ta-ta!